There is something within you that most people will never discover, not because it's unattainable, but because it was hidden, silenced, ridiculed. Since childhood, we are conditioned to see the world with only two eyes, to interpret reality based on what is palpable, what is logical, what can be measured or explained. But there is a third eye, a spiritual eye, that has always been there, in the center of your being, waiting to be awakened. This is not a new concept. Ancient civilizations knew it. They called it the portal of the soul, eye of the spirit, bridge between worlds. It is located between the eyebrows, but modern science associates it with the pineal gland, a small structure in the center of the brain. Why then has such a tiny part of our body been the object of so much symbolism, mystery, and reverence throughout history? Simple. Because this is the access point to true vision, the kind of vision that goes beyond physical light. It is the sense that allows us to perceive parallel realities, deep intuitions, invisible presences, and spiritual connections that the five senses cannot grasp. When it is active, you perceive hidden patterns, recognize lies easily, and feel the truth vibrate within you, even when it is invisible to ordinary eyes. But the question that haunts us is, why hide it? Why have we been taught that everything is outside of us when the greatest power is inside? The answer is disturbing, because who awakens this power can no longer be controlled, no longer follows blind orders, does not consume in the same way. Not afraid of the same fears, he begins to see the matrix. And when someone sees the matrix, the illusion is undone. Institutionalized religions do not talk about it, schools ignore it, the media ridicule, but the wise men of all ages knew the third eye is the portal of liberation. He breaks the bonds of the ego, silences the chaotic mind, and reconnects us with the divine origin of existence. He is the key to seeing not only the world, but yourself. This video is an invitation, a journey, an activation. Get ready, because from now on, you will never see reality the same way again. What we call the third eye is not just a mystical or symbolic concept. It is an anatomical and energetic reality present in the center of the human brain, in the pineal gland, a small pine-coned organ located between the two cerebral hemispheres. Interestingly, this gland has unique characteristics. It is sensitive to light, has cells similar to those of the retina, and in some traditions is considered the throne of the soul. But what makes this structure so special? The third eye is the seat of spiritual perception, the point of convergence between individual consciousness and the universal quantum field. It is through him that we access visions, intuitions, deep insights, and a direct connection with what many call divine. When activated, this inner eye transcends time, space, and the limitations of logic. It sees what is beyond. It is no coincidence that so many ancient cultures have spoken of him. In Egypt, it was represented by the Eye of Horus, symbol of protection, wisdom, and clairvoyance. In India, it is the Ajna chakra, the center of command, where the powers of the awakened mind are manifested. In esoteric Christianity, the lamp of the body is the spiritual eye which, when illuminated, makes the whole body shine in light. But over time, this knowledge was being erased, distorted, and discredited. Why? Because the third eye represents the sovereignty of the soul, and a sovereign soul is uncontrollable. The one who awakens this inner vision no longer bows to blind dogmas, does not consume impulsively, does not accept imposed truths. He begins to question everything. The matrix starts to crumble, and that is the biggest fear of power structures. The system in which we live, governments, organized religions, corporations, does not feed on your freedom, but on your ignorance. If you do not see beyond, you are manipulable. If you live in the automatic attached to the five senses, you do not realize the hidden gears that operate behind the scenes of reality. Therefore, this eye was veiled, and everything that could activate it was marginalized. Meditation, inner silence, contemplation, self-knowledge. We have reached a point in history where spiritual vision is treated as superstition. But this is not chance, it is design. An old, subtle, but extremely effective design, because the more disconnected you are from your higher self, the more fragile, confused, and vulnerable you become. But the moment of awakening has arrived. We are living in an era of revelations, where what was hidden begins to emerge, and the third eye is the master key of this new cycle of consciousness. An inner portal that not only reveals what is beyond, but what is within you, asleep, waiting to be reborn. For a long time, the existence of the third eye was treated as a myth, relegated to esoteric books, sacred texts, and occult traditions. But what happens when science, albeit against its will, begins to find evidence that there is indeed something special in the pineal gland? This is where the veil between the invisible and the measurable begins to tear. Science already knows. The pineal gland produces melatonin, the hormone responsible for regulating our sleep and wake cycles. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. What few people know is that this same gland is composed of tissues similar to the eye, with photoreceptor cells. Yes, she can literally perceive the light, even when buried in the center of the brain. How is that possible? Why would the body keep an internal eye if it was not made to see something? And here comes one of the most intriguing discoveries. Studies suggest that the pineal may be linked to the production of dimethyltryptamine, DMT, an extremely potent psychedelic substance capable of inducing altered states of consciousness, spiritual visions, and near-life experiences, death. This same substance is found in plants used in ancient shamanic rituals, such as ayahuasca, and also in small doses in the human body. Now, think with me. Why would our brain produce such a powerful substance, which can open portals to non-ordinary realities, if all this was just hallucination? The answer, which many scientists avoid touching, is that consciousness may not be a simple creation of the brain, but something the brain captures, like an antenna. And the pineal would be the key of this capture. On the spiritual side, masters and mystics of all times have affirmed the same. There is an eye within us that sees beyond time, that accesses memories from other lives, parallel dimensions, and forgotten sagacities. Indian yogis activate it with breathing practices and deep meditation. Tibetan monks claim that it allows to see the true nature of mind. And in ancient Egypt, the symbol of the Eye of Horus, with proportions identical to those of the pineal gland seen in cross-section, was the supreme emblem of awakened consciousness. And here is the crucial point. When we combine scientific data with spiritual reports, a new paradigm emerges. We are not talking about just one gland. We are talking about a biological and energetic portal that connects you to infinity. A cosmic antenna hidden in your brain, a spark of the divine with dormant potential. Have you ever noticed how some people just feel things before they happen? How do they access levels of perception that seem impossible to explain? This is not magic. This is heightened sensitivity. It is the third eye manifesting itself, even if still instinctively or unconsciously. Therefore, it is no longer possible to ignore. There is too much evidence to deny the existence of a mechanism of perception beyond the five senses. And the question that remains to us now is, why are you still with it closed? Long before modern science even imagined the existence of the pineal gland, ancient civilizations already knew. Inside each human being, there is a portal that, when activated, reveals the true reality. An invisible eye, able to see beyond appearances. lies of the world and even time. In ancient Egypt, this knowledge was considered sacred. The initiates in the temples of Isis and Osiris went through deep rituals, shrouded in mystery, which lasted years. The Eye of Horus was not only a symbol of protection, but the ultimate emblem of awakened consciousness. And if we look at its design carefully, we see that its structure is identical to the pineal gland cut in section. They knew, they saw with this eye. In ancestral India, this center of power was called the Ajna Chakra, the center of mental and spiritual command. The rishis, Vedic sages, have developed precise techniques for their activation: rhythmic breathing, prolonged meditation, chanting of mantras like the Om, frequency that resonates exactly in the region between the eyebrows, and specific body postures that redirected the vital energy, prana, to this region. But perhaps the most surprising methods come from Mesoamerica and the Amazon. Peoples like the Mayans and Incas, as well as the shamans of the Brazilian and Peruvian forests, used sacred plants such as ayahuasca, which contains DMT, a substance linked to the awakening of the third eye. Their rituals involved mental preparation, fasting, spiritual diets, and chanting that guided the inner journey. They did not see with physical eyes, but crossed the veil of illusions and access dimensions that today quantum physics begins to describe. In ancient China, Taoist masters practiced the small celestial circulation, a type of meditation where energy is conducted through the body's meridians until it concentrates at the point between the eyebrows. It was there, in the palace of emptiness, that transcendental perception manifested itself. Many reported lucid visions, meetings with spiritual guides, and even the conscious projection of the soul. And behind all this, there was a principle. The awakening of the third eye required discipline, purity, and deep intention. It was not a mystical curiosity. It was a call, a mission, because who activates this center awakens to a reality where there is no longer how to pretend not to see. The truth imposes itself, and with it comes responsibility. These civilizations knew that the human being was much more than flesh and blood. They knew that we are spiritual beings living a physical experience, and that this eye was the bridge of reconnection with what we were, are, and always will be. So the methods were preserved with such zeal. They were passed on only to the initiates, those who were ready. Because activating this power without preparation could lead to confusion, madness, or the total loss of meaning of ordinary life. What we have left today is to reconstruct that knowledge. Put the fragments together. Hear the whispers left by these people, in stones, texts, legends. Because everything points to the same destination, the awakening of the true being, and what modernity treated as superstition, the new spirituality is rediscovering as the world's oldest divine technology, the awakening of the third eye. If ancient civilizations developed sophisticated techniques to activate the third eye, modern society, perhaps without noticing, or perhaps intentionally, has built an invisible prison to keep it off. The matrix in which we live today is made of distraction, fear, control, and excess stimulation. And all this acts in a subtle and constant way against the awakening of your higher perception, because who sees with the third eye is not manipulable. And this, let's face it, does not matter to those in control. Let's start with what enters our body: industrialized food full of chemical additives, excess sugar, fluoride in water and toothpastes. All this intoxicates the pineal gland. And this is not conspiracy theory, it's pure chemistry. Fluoride, for example, has affinity for calcified tissues, and studies have already shown that it accumulates directly in the pineal gland, promoting its calcification. That is, this gland, which should be a subtle crystal, begins to turn into a dead rock. Now think, Why is a compound toxic to the pineal is present in so many common products? Would it be carelessness or a plan? In addition, we live surrounded by electromagnetic fields, Wi-Fi, 5G, radio waves, screens and more screens. This interferes with the energy field of the body. The pineal, being sensitive to light and vibration, suffers from this subtle pollution. Have you ever felt mentally exhausted just from being on the phone all day? No wonder. This exhausts your brain's ability to enter deeper states of consciousness. And the bombing doesn't stop there. The Matrix uses fear, urgency, and scarcity as emotional fuel. Just turn on the TV or open any social network to notice. Wars, crises, panic, comparisons, charges, excess of stimulus. All this disconnects you from your essence and keeps you in a state of constant survival. And in that state, the third eye remains closed, because it only awakens when the mind is silent, when the body enters into harmony, when the soul breathes. The educational system also contributes. We are taught from small to obey, repeat, memorize, but rarely to question, intuit, or hear the inner voice. Spirituality has become taboo. Intuition has become nonsense. Dreams are treated as useless fantasies. And silence, this great portal, is replaced by constant noise. And when someone tries to awaken, he is ridiculed, called a mystic, lunatic, conspirator, or traveled. The awakening itself is discredited. The Matrix is afraid of those who awaken, because an awakened being breaks the pattern, questions the structure, and inspires others to wake up too. Finally, modern life conditions us to seek meaning out. Success, status, money, beauty, approval. But all this is quicksand, because the only true realization is within. And the third eye is the map for that reunion. But while we are immersed in the illusion of the Matrix, this map remains invisible. So, the alert is, if you want to wake up, you will need to swim against the current. You will need to detoxify your body, silence your mind, and disconnect from the programming they taught you as true. But the good news is that despite everything, the third eye never closes completely. He just falls asleep. And with the right practices, with the right intention, it will pulsate again. And when that happens, nothing will be like before. Waking up the third eye is not like lighting a soft light in a dark room. It's more like opening a window suddenly, with the strong wind coming in, lifting everything up, changing the temperature, smell and feel of the whole environment. The awakening is deep, real and transformative, and yes, it comes with symptoms, many. The first sign is usually a pressure or pulsation between the eyebrows, something like a subtle tingling, a slight pressure, sometimes even throbbing, as if something inside of you is waking up trying to expand. This feeling can arise during meditation or out of nowhere in the middle of the day when you are most connected to your essence. Another common symptom is acute intuition. But it's not just that inner voice. It's as if you begin to perceive invisible patterns in things. You think of someone and the person appears. You feel that something is going to happen and it does. Your mind begins to operate in a more subtle field where time is not linear and coincidences become signs. This is not magic. It is high perception. You may also notice changes in dreams. They become more vivid, colorful, symbolic. You begin to remember more details, wake up with strong messages, and even experiences that seem too real to be just dreams. Some people even report projections of consciousness where they feel that they leave the body and explore other realities. But not everything is flowers. The awakening of the third eye can also bring discomfort. Headaches, especially in the frontal region, are common. Your brain is being stimulated differently. There's a reprogramming going on. You may feel tiredness, changes in appetite, and a greater sensitivity to light and sound. Another strong symptom is disconnection with the superficial world. Things that once seemed important, status, social networks, opinions of others, begin to lose meaning. You feel an intense need to remain silent, to move away from the chaos, to seek deeper answers. This can generate existential crises, yes, but it is part of the process. And more, you begin to perceive lies and manipulations with absurd ease. It is as if you see behind the masks of people, media speeches, intentions hidden. This can cause a shock at first, because everything seems false. But it is precisely here that your true liberation begins. Some people also experience subtle visions, flashes of light, geometric images, spiritual presences. It is the multidimensional sensibility awakening. It is not hallucination. It is magnification of perception. The third eye is like an antenna that begins to pick up frequencies that have always been there, but you could not access before. And the most beautiful of all this is that you start to feel something very deep, an intense connection with the whole. You feel that you are not alone, that it is part of something much greater, that there is an intelligence guiding everything, including you, and this awakens a different peace. Not that peace of it's okay, but the peace of I am part of the infinite. But beware, each awakening is unique. There is no manual. These symptoms can arise in a mild or intense, gradual or sudden way. The important thing is to welcome the process with courage, curiosity and love. Because once the third eye begins to open, you will never see the world the same way again. And so we have reached the end of this journey, or rather, the beginning of something much greater. You now carry a knowledge that most never dare to seek, a power that cannot be touched, but touches everything. The awakening of the third eye is not an event. It is a crossing, a process of returning to what you have always been, but they forgot to remember you. From the beginning, we were conditioned to seek out what was always inside. We were taught to see with the eyes of the body, but not with the eyes of the soul. To obey systems, but not to listen to one's own intuition. To follow rules, but not to walk your own paths. That is now over. You are not a spectator. You are a co-creator. From today, everything changes. Because knowledge requires responsibility. You can no longer pretend that you do not know. You can no longer claim ignorance. The veil has been torn, the portal is open, and the truth has already touched your conscience. And the big question now is, what are you going to do with it? Will you go back to the usual routine, let this knowledge fade away, like a dream forgotten when waking up? Or are you going to integrate it into your day, into your practice, into your life, and become, in fact, an awakened being? The choice is yours. It always has been. If this has awakened something in you, don't stop here. Sign up and dive even deeper into the truth that has been hidden for centuries.